let's start with our intro. Hey guys, welcome to Watchmen Club Session 4, Issues 7 and 8. I am so excited to have you hanging out with me on a Sunday afternoon. It's beautiful outside, and I'm so excited to be but I'm excited to be spending it indoors with you guys, because honestly, I'm an indoor kid. A lot of us readers are. So let's start this whole thing off with our Alan Moore
code
clip.
In America has had some quite specific laws drawn up about how to treat things like violence and sex in comics. It's, I suppose, a precursor of the Rambo mentality, where you can show horrific violence happening, hot lead flying everywhere, nobody gets scratched. And I've had people attack my books because they show a childbirth, or because they show violence realistically, with the blood. Because they show human sexuality, hopefully realistically. Because they show human politics realistically. And I've had people saying, oh, this is destroying the innocence of childhood, you know, sort of how can you push this sort of depressing, sordid, real-world filth down the mouths of our kids? I mean, the main thing that seems to irritate them seems to me to be political, in that they want us to show superheroes and other comic characters as perpetual Boy Scouts. They don't want us to show a world in which authority can ever be corrupt or in which anything ever goes wrong. And the main thing that they cite as a reason for this is that it is harmful to the small and vulnerable minds of children, which, obviously I'm a parent myself. I mean, I've got Leah and Amber. And basically my feeling is that the world that we have been careless enough to leave laying around for our children to inherit is a place which is sometimes hostile, which is sometimes dangerous, which has got a lot of very frightening edges to it. And the only way that I can help my children, the only real sort of chance that I can give them of securing their emotional and physical and psychological survival, is to actually tell them about the stuff that's going on in the world. If there are sort of nuclear pollutants and poisons laying around, let's tell them about that. If there are psychopaths lurking upon every street corner, they should know. I don't think that it does children any service to present them this artificial, pastel-coloured Care Bear world in which everybody is friendly, everybody wants to hug each other.
All right. Papa Moore talking about how it doesn't do any good to sugarcoat the world for our babies. We got to tell them what's up. We got to tell them the truth. And you don't have to be a dick about it, but you do need to tell them what's up. And I think that I really agree with that. Before we get into our issue 7 recap, I did want to talk about, in this clip, Alan Moore brings up the Comics Code Authority. And I've seen a lot of questions out there on the internet asking me, well, if there was the Comics Code Authority and the Watchmen, it obviously has sex and violence and things in them, drugs and stuff. How did this come out? And the answer is that this was not approved by the Comics Code Authority. They knew this was not going to be approved, but they put it out anyways because they really couldn't do anything. It was just like they put like a mature, I think they may have put a mature reader sticker on it. I'm not sure. Actually, I need to look into that. I'm sure Amy Dallin would know. But because of the success of things like Watchmen and the success of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, both of those things did not have Comics Code Authority stamp of approval on them. And but people love them and bought them, and then the Comics Code Authority fell apart a little bit in the 90s. After the dark age of comics in the 80s, where everything got really dark and gritty. Okay. All right. So, yeah, and I do love that in this documentary, Alan Moore has both of his daughters, and so it's like he's an actual father. He's not just Papa to us little readers, he's an actual dad too, and he really does care. He really does care about children, and he does think about their development, and he is aware that that his art form, comic books, like, often end up in the hands of children, and that you can influence them for the better, hopefully, and give them a little bit of truth, in an entertainment form that they can accept, that and some little bit of philosophy and things like that. I love how he just hides all this stuff in there, and he's doing it on purpose because he really does like want to help humanity and make it a better thing, you know, make us all a little bit more aware. So, okay. So let's start with our recap of issue number 7, A Brother to Dragons. So things heat up in this issue, both literally and figuratively, for Dan and Laurie, who are reigniting dangerous habits. Following a tour of Night Owl's Batcave, the two have a failed sexual encounter in the living room. Dan awakens from a nightmare and confronts his desire to once again become a masked Avenger. At Laurie's suggestion, the two dress up in their old costumes and take a joyride in Owl's ship Archimedes. While flying around town, they spot a tenement fire and intervene, saving many lives. After a successful mission, the couple make passionate love for the first time. Now emboldened, Night Owl plans to bust Rorschach out of jail. That's our cliffhanger ending. I like this. I mean, I like this. I like romance, so I really like this issue a lot. I like seeing Dan and Laurie get together and how they kind of, you know, it's really adorable watching them work. And it's so cute how, you know, Dan is the proper one. You know, he's the nice guy and he's the proper guy. You know, and Laurie's kind of like she's so flirting with him, like so hard in this, like constantly just like bringing up little things, come on, Dan. But he, you know, that's why they're attracted to one another though, because she's kind of the bad girl, you know, and he's like the good guy, and so they have this thing that works out. But a lot of this issue is really talking about the sense of wonder. We talk a lot about why Dan became Night Owl through Laurie poking around in his bat cave, with his owl cave, I guess I should say. And he talks a lot about why he got into becoming Night Owl, what his reasons were, and a lot of it is based on a sense of wonder that he had from a child, like as a child, and how that is absolutely a part of superhero-dom and people who are fascinated in superheroes. It's like because they inspire this sense of awe. They are these larger than life characters, and they inspire you to want to be bigger than yourself, you know, to want to be bigger and like do something and make an impact and be effective in some way to like help things. And we talk about it a lot. Dan talks about it a lot. On page, let's go to book cam. Okay. On page 217. Let's see here. Back here. As a kid, I read about Pegasus flying carpets, then later about birds and planes. Finally, I mastered in aeronautics and zoology at Harvard. And that's so perfect. Like, that's so perfect. Because it is like he, as a child, he had this like imagination and sense of wonder, and he was reading these stories, these storybooks, and he was like, oh my gosh, he heard about a flying horse, Pegasus. You can get on a horse that has wings and you can fly around. Like, oh, that just like made his day when he heard about that. And then like flying carpets, like, and you see how as he gets older and as his imagination kind of shrinks a little bit, as we get older, our imaginations shrink a little bit. But that same thing, the idea of flying and the idea of freedom still appeals to him. And so he translates the sense of wonder. And it wasn't really about a flying horse. It was about what it was symbolic for. It was symbolic for freedom and also having a higher perspective. Being able to, you know, fly over some problems, some issues. And we go on later and he talks about how, you know, that a lot of this was just an adolescent romantic thing, you know, like all of this was just kind of this adolescent romantic thing. And then I love when he goes on here and he's talking about how, like, it would have been like joining the Knights of the Round Table, being a part of a fellowship of legendary beings, you know, talking about the crime busters. And it's just like so cute. Like he's just so, like, it just speaks to him, this idea. And this is something that absolutely like spoke to me when I was a kid. Like, I get it. Like, superheroes were very inspiring to me. I saw the X-Men and I was like, whoa, like flipped a switch in my brain, you know? And it's like, and it's this desire that they create is so powerful. And I loved, like, especially, let's go back here. I really loved it when they're talking about the goggles in these two, where he puts on his night owl goggles and she's showing him, you're like, oh, look, you know, you can see in the dark with my little goggles. And he's like, as I remembered, they work pretty good. No matter how black it got, when I looked through these goggles, everything was clear as day. Everything was clear as day. And it's just like, oh, that's so good. That's so good. You know, it's just like when I became Night Owl, all of the gray area went away and I just like everything was like made sense, you know, and it's just like so perfect because when you do like become this higher person, like becoming like a superhero would be like you're channeling this higher version of yourself, and this version of yourself is dedicated to some ideal. And a lot of them are dedicated to the ideal of justice. And so when you kind of channel these higher things, yeah, like all of the mundane bullshit kind of drops away. And I love how, you know, Dan's just like, Dan's acting so mild-mannered. He's trying to pretend so hard that he doesn't miss it and that he doesn't care, you know, but he's just totally fucking cares. Like, he super cares, and he's super bummed that it's like he's not being able to do this. And Laurie, meanwhile, I like how Laurie is just like accepts that she's like, oh, I'm a cigarette smoker. I'm gonna stop smoking these. Oh, whatever, I'm gonna smoke them again. She doesn't give a fuck. Like, she is absurd and she knows it. Whereas Dan is like trying so hard not to be, but it's like, no, you still got that itch, dude. You still got that itch. I also love the implications about how, okay, going back to Dan likes bad girls. Dan likes bad girls. He's one of those guys. He's one of those guys. He's one of those squares. I know these guys. They love bad girls. And he's one of them. And I love when she's poking around. Laurie's poking around in his little cave. And she finds that photo of Twilight Lady. And it's like, oh, you know, from one night bird to another. Love Twilight Lady. And he's like, oh, that was, some vice queen I busted. What's her name? It's just like, bitch, you know exactly who the fuck that is. Like, don't even front here, like, acting like, oh, I don't know what this is. Like, that's obviously your Catwoman. That's obviously your Catwoman, Batman. You know, like, that's your bad girl that you busted, but then you had a thing with because she's, like, super hot. Because he liked bad girls. But that's the thing about people who are, like, justice people, is that they are attracted to criminals. It's like police and criminals have this like this romance, you know, there's this romance aspect to it. And that's really like, that really becomes apparent when, you know, we have the dream where, and I just love this dream so much. Like, this is so good. Where we have Dan, and he's just a normal Dan. He's not a night owl. He's a fat Dan. And he sees his vice queen, you know, his vice queen. And his vice queen isn't just Twilight Lady. It's symbolic of his desire to chase that, you know, his desire to be a superhero. And they're together naked, and then they tear each other apart. And really what they're really on the inside is Night Owl. And then you have Silk Spectre. And it's just like, that's the thing. It's like Dan, like, he's pretending to be human. He's pretending to be a sheeple. He's pretending so hard to be a sheeple, but he's not. On the inside, he's a fucking crazy predator. On the inside, he's fucking Night Owl, dude. He's a fucking crazy predator Night Owl, and he's trying so hard to just be a sheeple, and he just can't. He just can't. Especially in the face of all of this impending doom, you know? It's like, especially in the face of this impending doom. And this is very much apparent with the fact that, you know, he can't perform sexually as Dan, you know, like Laurie's been getting to know Dan in the basement, not Night Owl. And he's just like, I don't want to be this. Like, this isn't sexy to me. Being Dan is not hot. And I love that, like, you have this, like, perfect juxtaposition of, like, Dan and Laurie having this kind of awkward encounter while in in the meanwhile, Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, is in the background, and he is performing his charity feat. And like, you have Adrian, who did hang up his tights, and Adrian did stop being a superhero, but here he is performing as Ozymandias. So even though he hasn't gone out doing vigilantism, he's still performing as his old self, and so he's still in really good shape. Like, he's still like, everyone on TV is like, look how amazing he, for a man in his 40s, look at him go, you know, like, I love it. It's so cute. But like Dan, like he hasn't been performing as Night Owl, and now he's all soft and he's fat, you know, and he hates it, but he's trying to act like he likes it. Yeah, Cops and Robbers, a love story. Brown Recluse, thank you for your donation. I know, it is. I heard Alan Moore talking about this once, where he's just like, he's like, yeah, it's weird how cops and the robbers, they love each other, they just want to fight, you know. And I was just like, oh man, he's so right. When he said that, I was just like, oh, it totally is. It's totally this weird romance, you know. It absolutely is. So crazy. So crazy. And so, okay, but the thing is that, okay, so Dan, he can't make it happen. He can't make it happen as Dan, you know, and it's just not working out for him. But later, you know, and I love that it's Laurie's suggestion. So later, he's down there, you know, she's like, what are you doing down here? And he's like, I don't know, man. I feel so fucking impotent. He finally has to deal with the demon, you know, the demon that's been haunting him. And that is that he feels impotent as Dan. He feels impotent as Dan, and that's why he couldn't get it up with Laurie, because it sucks. And there's all this shit going down, and he's a motherfucking hero. And he's just like, I'm just sitting here in my fucking house by myself, you know, with all my fucking dusty ass toys. Like, I need to be out there doing some shit, you know? Like, you can't take it. You can't take it. You can't pretend. You can't keep pretending. And of course, it's like, I love that she's the one who's like, you know, I mean, I'm used to going out at 3 a.m. and doing something stupid, you know? She's totally a bad influence on Dan. Oh, I love that Laurie's a bad influence on Dan. I love that Laurie's a bad influence on Dan, but he needs that bad influence because he's too good, you know? And the thing is like, she's kind of a bad girl, so she needs a good influence. So she needs to be with like a good guy. So that's why like their whole thing works out, because like they kind of help each other and balance each other out in that way. And yeah, she does like it. They get in the costumes, you know, she's like, I know it's gonna fucking get you excited. She's like a fucking kitten ready to pounce, you know, on this fucking guy. She's like, let's get in our costumes. Let's go out. Let's fucking go out, dude. Let's fucking do it. And so he's like, he does. And of course, you know, they have the successful mission. They go out, they fucking save these motherfuckers, you know, like, it's like so sick. Like, what adrenaline rush, what a high. And now like Dan has become Night Owl again, and then, like, his predator instincts have returned. You know, he's like a fucking, because owls are fucking predators, you know, like, they're scary ass motherfucking birds, all right? Like, they're birds, but they're scary birds, and he's a scary bird. And so now that he's back, baby, you know, Dan is back because Night Owl's here. Because that, I mean, it's like, it's twisted in with his libido, you know, it's like this whole thing. And he's like, you know, they're talking about it later, like after they have sex, and all right, and he's, okay, so, like, they're talking about it after sex. Let's see here. Here we go. And she's like, oh, do you think it was the costumes, Dan? Do you think it was the costumes? And he's like, yeah, kinda. Like, kinda. Yeah, kinda. But, like, yeah, totally. Like, and he's like, it feels so good to, like, to say that, to come out of the closet. To come out of the closet and just say, like, I like to dress up like a fucking weirdo and have sex, and, like, it makes me excited, like, and she's like, oh, well, I've been trying to wake something up in you, because she knew that shit was hiding. Like, this bitch knows what's up. She knows this fucking guy. He's a mark. He's a total mark. He's a rich guy. She just got kicked out. She needs a place to stay. She needs a stable dude. This guy did some weird shit just like she did weird shit. It's gonna be so perfect. And so he's like, yeah, you're right. You know, it has awoken. It's got a big appetite. And she's like, oh yeah, what do you want to fucking do? You know, like being a perv. And then he's like, I want to fucking bust Rorschach out of jail. And she's like, what? Like, that's not what I wanted to hear. Like, that's not what I wanted. Like, I don't want you to fucking bust for it. I want us to have hot sex somewhere else. Like, what the fuck? But that's what you get, Laurie. You woke him up. You woke up the predator, and now he's awake, and now he's crazy. You know, like, Dan's fucking crazy, all right? You think he's mild-mannered Dan, but he's fucking not, okay? He's a crazy guy who dresses up like a fucking owl, all right? And this guy fucks, you know? So, and I love, okay, so this whole thing ends on a Bible verse with Job 30:29 through 30, chapter 30, verse 29 through 30. I am brother to dragons and companion to owls. My skin is black upon me and my bones are burned with heat. And I was like, ooh, what does that mean? What does that mean? You know, and I had a lot of Bible study. I had a lot of Bible study growing up. I did a lot of that. And we did talk about Job. And I actually really enjoyed the story of Job because it's fucked up. Do you guys know how fucked up Bible stories are? Because they're fucked up. Job was beloved by God. All right. This guy was killing it. He had money and abundance and family and property. And like, he was good and he loved God and he was a good guy. You know, he was just like, he was a chill, great guy. And then there's this angel that comes to God, an angel named Satan, I believe, and is asks him like, well, I mean, you just hooked Job up. The only reason he loves you is because you hooked it up for him. And if you let me wreak havoc on his life, then he wouldn't praise you anymore. And you see that he doesn't really love you. He just loves all his stuff, you know. And so God's like, I'll take that bet. I will take away my countenance from him, and you can do whatever you want to this guy. And so this angel fucks this guy's life up. His children die. His health is taken away. He's like covered in like sores and stuff. He's like, all of his stuff is taken. Like, he's just like so fucked. He's so fucked. And this particular verse is when he's kind of at his lowest, you know. This is where Job is at his lowest, and he's talking to his three homies, and his three homies are like, dude, like, God fucked your shit up, bro, like, fuck that guy, you know. And Job is like, let me tell you how fucked I am, you know. And he's like going off on how fucked his life is. But the thing about Job is that Job never loses faith, even though he comes close, and he certainly curses his fate, you know, and he curses the shit that's happened to him, and he's like, please just kill me, you know, God, just please just take me out at this point. But he never turns his back on God. And then he is rewarded. At the end of the story, he's rewarded and given like even more better shit than he had before. You know, God was like, you passed the test. It's so fucked up. It's like God's a weird, jealous girlfriend who like puts her boyfriend through some weird, fucked up test to make sure he's loyal. You know, it's so weird. But I think that it really applies to like this with Dan, how like Dan became Night Owl, and that was like when he was Night Owl, he felt like he was blessed by God. You know, he had that excitement that he felt, that sense of wonder as a child was translated into an adult thing, but it was also more than that. It was archetypal, you know, it was this like, he was blessed and he got to go make a bunch of stuff and beat bad guys up, and he was having the fucking time of his life. You know, he was having the fucking time of his life. Who wouldn't, you know? But that was taken away from him. And the Keene Act happened, and that was taken away from him. And just like Job, he accepts his fate, you know, and he never curses God, and he never curses being a night owl, and he never curses being a superhero. But but he is crazy, you know, and he's not ready to give up, though. He's not going to give up, you know, and so this is that moment where it's like, okay, you know, he's cracked. This is him cracking, just like Job. So I thought that was cool. And also, when I was looking it up, I was looking up this particular verse, and this is really fascinating. So Bible verses, right? There's a lot of different types of Bibles. There's a lot of different translations of the Bible. And if you look up a verse, there are pages that have the same verse from every version of the Bible in English that there is, or whatever. And you can see how different every single verse is. like they're all slightly different. It's like telephone game. Like some things were translated one way and some things were translated to another. And one of the things that was different in this was instead of brother to dragons and companion to owls, it was brother to hyenas and companion to female ostriches or ostriches. But there was a lot of hyenas and ostriches. I know this is totally off topic, but, you know, there we are. I just found some stuff. I was digging around on the internet and I found some weird shit. I mean, it's just so interesting. Like, you really can't trust these, like, translations. It just shows you, like, this weird degraded telephone line thing. Okay, and so then we end on Blood from the Shoulder of Pallas. That was our supplemental this week. I know I heard that some of you on Twitter were saying that it was really hard to read this. Some people were saying that they really had a hard time reading Dan's ornithological article that he wrote about owls. And when I first read this, I had a really hard time with it. But now I actually really enjoyed it. And I did see some other people saying that they really enjoyed the supplemental as well. Let's check it out in Bookcam. All right. So, yeah, here we go. Blood from the Shoulder of Pallas. And this is Pallas Athena. There's there's like a lot of legends. I don't know. It might be your sister or half-sister or something. She ends up, this Pallas girl, Athena accidentally kills her friend. And then now she has to take her name. And it's like this weird fucked up thing. And Athena is the goddess of wisdom and strategy. In the modern times, she's been translated as war. But, you know, I like to think of it more as strategy, you know, and also wisdom. But one of her symbols is the owl. And the owl is obviously a symbol for, it is a symbol for wisdom, you know. And so since she's a goddess of wisdom, it makes sense that she would have an owl, you know what I'm saying. And I don't know. I love kind of some of the stuff that he said in here. Like, I really enjoy some of the stuff that he said in here. I like that he said, I believe approaching our subject with sensibilities of statisticians and dissectionists, we distance ourselves increasingly from the marvelous and spellbinding planet of imagination whose gravity drew us to our studies in the first place. This is not to say that we should cease to establish facts and to verify our information, but merely to suggest that unless those facts can be imbued with a flash of poetic insight, they remain dull gems. And I thought that was really great. I thought that was, like, really perfect, because he talks about how he's become such a big fan of owls that he's, like, studied them so much that he kind of lost his sense of wonder about them, you know, by looking at them and measuring them and, you know, doing, like, learning more about them. In a way, the more he learned, he did distance himself from it. And I love the thing about poetic insight. I just think that's so true. And I think that that's something that, like, I don't know, I see a lot of online is like, online, I just see a lot of people, like, talking about things, but, like, they're just dissecting them, you know? Like, they're just like, oh, what happened in this part of the trailer? You know? It's just like, oh, now you see this thing. And it's like, this isn't a critique, you know, like, this is a weird masturbatory hype train thing. Like, this isn't, I don't know. There has to be some sort of poetic insight. You have to have some poetic insight to kind of bring meaning to it. I'm about that, you know, and that's kind of what I try to do on my show, is just bring up, try to bring some poetic insight to things, man. 'Cause it's like, everybody's, I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know how to say it. Everyone's just so left-brained, you know. Left-brained activity is very much something that's like letters, numbers. You know, when I say left brain, it's like that's where you process letters and numbers. So that's like math, that's writing. And these are all amazing pursuits that are very magical and very powerful. But that's the left side of your brain. The left side of your brain does that. And then the right side of your brain is like colors and sounds, you know, and that's like music and painting and things like that. And so it's like in our society, a lot of the left brain activities are very much like drilled into us, you know, and it's like, okay, left brain, left brain, left brain, like learn how to write stuff, learn how to do your math, like da 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 da, you have to form a sentence, all this stuff. And again, you need to learn these things, absolutely. But you also need to have like your right brain stimulated too, you know, it's really important to have that part. You kind of have to have both parts of it. That's how you kind of have like a better, I don't know, a better life in my opinion. But this is also, like, this whole thing is really talking about how Dan loses, you know, becomes a superhero and then becomes disillusioned with it after he quits, you know, and all this other stuff. And, like, this is really just a big metaphor for him finding his inspiration again, you know, and he finds his inspiration through Laurie and becomes Night Owl and reemerges as this victorious bird, victorious bird.